The golden sun of the western sky was sinking behind the dusty hills when a lone rider appeared on the trail leading to Silver Creek. His name was Ethan Cole, a quiet man with steady hands and a heart full of memories. His horse, a tired brown mare, moved slowly as if feeling the weight of her rider's silence. The wind carried the smell of dry sage and old dust, the scent of home, yet not quite the same. Ethan hadn't seen this land in 10 long years. 10 years since he rode away chasing dreams of gold, adventure, and freedom. Back then, he was just a boy full of hope, believing the world would open its arms for him. But life on the frontier had taught him the hard way that dreams were fragile. He had seen towns rise and fall, friends disappear, and promises fade into the desert wind. Now he was back, not because of riches or fame, but because of something he couldn't explain. A quiet voice inside his chest pulling him toward this town, whispering that something unfinished waited here. As he rode down the hill, the little town of Silver Creek came into view. It hadn't changed much. The same wooden buildings lined the dusty main street. The saloon stood tall with its swinging doors, and the old blacksmith shop still had smoke curling from the chimney. Children's laughter floated in the air somewhere near the well, and dogs barked lazily at passing wagons. Ethan slowed his horse near the town's edge, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. He saw faces that looked older now, men with deeper wrinkles, women with tired smiles. Some nodded politely at him, not recognizing who he was. A few gave him curious glances, as strangers often do when someone new rides in. He dismounted in front of the general store and tied his horse to the post. Dust clung to his coat and hat, and the sun's orange light caught in his brown hair, making him look almost like a ghost from another time. Inside the store, the owner, Mr. Dillard, looked up from behind the counter. "Well, stranger," the man said, adjusting his spectacles. "You look like you've seen 1,000 miles of road. What can I get you?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Just water for me and oats for my horse. It's been a long ride." As the old man filled a tin cup, his eyes narrowed. "Say, you look mighty familiar. You ever been around these parts before?" Ethan took a slow sip of water, then nodded. "Long time ago. I was born not far from here." "Ah," Dillard said with a knowing nod. "Silver Creek boys have a way of coming back one way or another. The land keeps calling them." Ethan smiled but said nothing. The truth was, he didn't know why he came back. Maybe it was the memory of the hills, or maybe it was the ghost of a laughter that once echoed near the riverbank. He couldn't name it, but he could feel it. A gentle ache that grew stronger the closer he got to home. After paying for his supplies, Ethan walked outside and sat on the wooden steps of the store, watching the sunset spill gold across the dusty street. The air grew cooler as the evening shadows stretched long. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the town wash over him. The faint clatter of horseshoes, the creak of wagon wheels, the murmur of voices. It felt both strange and familiar, like hearing a song he used to know. A group of children ran past him, laughing and chasing one another, their bare feet kicking up dust. Ethan couldn't help but smile. He remembered when he used to run just like that, wild, barefoot, and free. But most of all, he remembered who ran beside him. Naya. The name floated into his thoughts like a whisper. He hadn't said it out loud in years, but the memory came so clearly that it almost hurt. Naya, the Apache girl with eyes like dark rivers and laughter brighter than sunshine. She used to race him by the river, always winning, and tease him when he pretended not to care. They had built forts from branches, carved initials on tree trunks, and made promises only children believe will last forever. Then one day, she was gone. The grown-ups said her people had moved away after a clash with settlers. Some said they'd been driven out. Others said worse things. Ethan never knew the truth, only that one morning the riverside was silent and Naya never came back. He had searched the woods for days, calling her name until his throat burned, but all he found was an old hair ribbon caught in a branch. He kept it for years, tucked away in his saddlebag, until time and distance turned memories into dreams. Now sitting in the fading light, those old feelings stirred again, and not as sharp as before, but still alive somewhere deep inside him. When the last streak of sunlight vanished, Ethan decided to ride down toward the river before nightfall. He wanted to see it again, to feel that place where so much of his childhood had lived. The path was quiet, lined with tall cottonwood trees whose leaves whispered softly in the evening breeze. The air smelled of water and earth, and the sky turned soft shades of purple and rose. When he reached the river, it looked almost exactly as he remembered. The water still moved slow and steady, glinting under the fading sky. Crickets sang nearby and frogs croaked from the shadows. He tied his horse to a low branch and walked closer to the water's edge, crouching down to touch it. The coolness of it brought back everything: laughter, friendship, and a promise made long ago under the stars. "We'll always find each other, no matter where we go," he smiled sadly. "Guess I didn't keep my word, Naya," he murmured. A soft rustling sound came from behind him, gentle at first, then clearer. He turned quickly, his hand instinctively moving toward the revolver at his belt. But there was no danger, only a figure standing a few steps away, half hidden by the fading light. It was a woman. She wore simple clothes, a long dress of deep brown fabric, and carried a bundle of herbs in her arms. Her long black hair fell freely over her shoulders, glinting in the soft moonlight. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. Something about her presence and her stillness, her quiet strength, made the world around him pause. "Evening. Ma'am," he said softly, tipping his hat. The woman looked at him, her eyes calm and searching. Then, without answering, she turned toward the water and gazed at the horizon. The silence between them stretched, filled with the sound of crickets and the whispering wind. Ethan opened his mouth to speak again, but before he could, the woman looked back at him, and for the briefest moment, he saw something familiar in her face, something that reached deep inside him and made his heart stop. She smiled faintly, and her voice came out like a whisper carried by the wind. "Don't you recognize me, cowboy?" Ethan froze. The world seemed to tilt. He blinked, and the woman was already walking away, her figure blending into the shadows of the trees. He took a step forward, trying to call out, but no sound came. His throat was tight, his mind spinning with disbelief. He watched until she vanished into the twilight, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves behind. For a long moment, Ethan stood by the river, staring into the darkness. The night air was cool, but his heart beat fast, full of questions he couldn't answer. Could it really be her? Could it be Naya after all these years? The moon rose slowly above the hills, painting the river silver. Ethan's reflection stared back at him from the water, older, lonelier, but with the faintest spark of something new in his eyes: hope. And as he mounted his horse and rode back toward the sleeping town, he knew one thing for certain: Silver Creek was no longer just his past. Something was waiting for him here. Something unfinished, something that might just change everything. The next morning, Ethan awoke before the sun had fully risen. Silver Creek was still quiet, the streets empty except for the faint sound of a dog barking in the distance. The cool air smelled of sagebrush and morning dew, and the first streaks of gold light painted the hills. Ethan felt restless, unable to shake the memory of the woman by the river. Her voice, her eyes, her presence. Something deep inside told him that she was not just a stranger. He saddled his horse and headed toward the river once more. The trail was familiar, worn from years of childhood footsteps, yet it had grown wilder with the passing seasons. Tall grass brushed against his legs, and the wind whispered through the trees. His mind replayed the night before over and over. The words, "Don't you recognize me, cowboy?" echoed in his thoughts like a melody he had once known and forgotten. When he reached the water, the river shimmered in the morning light, peaceful and serene. Ethan dismounted and led his horse to a patch of grass to graze. He walked along the riverbank, scanning every shadow, every ripple of water. He half expected the woman to appear again, though part of him feared that she would not. As he moved farther along the river, he heard the soft sound of humming. At first it was faint, almost drowned by the rustle of the leaves. Then it became clearer, a gentle flowing melody that seemed to blend perfectly with the sound of the river. It was a tune he had not heard in many years, yet it was painfully familiar. His heart skipped a beat. Ethan turned a bend in the river and saw her. She was kneeling near the water's edge, her hands carefully arranging a small collection of herbs. The sunlight caught her hair, making it shine like strands of black silk. Her face was calm, but her eyes seemed to hold a depth of sorrow and strength all at once. She did not look up when he approached, but Ethan felt as though she had already seen him. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to speak or simply watch. Then he gathered his courage. "Excuse me," he called softly. Are you from around here?" She turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting his. And in that instant, Ethan felt a shock run through him. Her eyes, they were the same eyes he remembered from his childhood. dark and deep with a spark of mischief and intelligence. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile, but she said nothing. Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he continued. I don't mean to intrude. I'm just—" He paused, searching for words. "I was hoping to, maybe find someone, a friend I used to know." The woman's gaze softened, and for the first time she spoke. Her voice was quiet, smooth, and full of warmth. "You found me," she said. Ethan froze. The word seemed impossible, yet every part of him knew it was true. "Naya?" he whispered, almost afraid to say the name out loud. A gentle nod was her only answer. Then she rose slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. She was taller now than he remembered, with a presence that seemed to belong to the land itself. Strong, calm, and unyielding. Yet beneath her strength, Ethan sensed the vulnerability of someone who had endured hardships beyond his understanding. I can't believe it," Ethan said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "After all these years—" Naya smiled, though her eyes held a shadow of sadness. "Years pass," she said softly. "But some things never leave us." Ethan took a cautious step closer. I thought you were gone. That I would never see you again." She looked down at her hands, tracing the edges of the herbs she had gathered. "I had to leave," she said quietly. "But I never forgot. And somehow, I think I was waiting to see you again, too." Ethan felt his chest tighten. The words hung between them like the quiet before a storm, full of unspoken emotions, memories, and longing. He remembered the days they had spent running along this very river, laughing until their sides ached, sharing secrets no one else could understand. He remembered the promises they had made, promises that the world had tried to destroy. You really are Naya," he said finally, his voice filled with awe. I thought I would never see your face again." Her eyes softened, and she took a small step toward him. "I am," she said simply. "And I'm still the same girl who raced you to that old tree by the bend." Ethan laughed softly, a sound that carried a mix of relief, nostalgia, and disbelief. "You always won," he admitted. "No matter how fast I ran, you always beat me." Naya chuckled lightly, the sound like a gentle breeze over the water. "And you always pretended you didn't care," she teased. Some things never change. For a few moments, they simply stood there looking at each other. The river flowed quietly, reflecting the morning sky. Birds sang in the trees, and the wind whispered through the tall grass. Time seemed to pause, as if the land itself recognized the reunion of two souls long separated. Finally, Ethan spoke again, his voice quieter now, filled with sincerity. "I left Silver Creek. I thought I was chasing a life I wanted, but I never wanted to leave this place, and I never wanted to leave you." Naya's gaze softened further, and she stepped closer still. "Life takes us on strange paths," she said. "But some connections, some people, they never truly leave us. Even when we are apart, they stay in our hearts." Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in years, he felt whole again. The river, the trees, the wind, and everything seemed brighter, alive with possibility. It was as though the world itself was celebrating this moment, allowing the past and present to meet at last. They spent the morning walking along the riverbank, sharing stories of their lives apart. Naya told him how she had learned to live with her people in the mountains, how she had helped heal the sick and care for the young. Ethan shared tales of his travels, the towns he had seen, and the lessons he had learned on the road. With every word, every laugh, every pause, the years melted away. They were no longer a boy and a girl separated by fear and circumstance. They were two people who had found their way back to each other, stronger, wiser, and more aware of the value of the moments they shared. By midday, the sun was high, and the river glimmered under its heat. Ethan and Naya sat on the grass, watching the water flow, feeling the quiet joy of simply being together. The town of Silver Creek lay beyond the trees, but for now, they were alone in a world that seemed to exist just for them. Ethan turned to Naya and spoke, his voice filled with hope. "I don't know what comes next, but I do know that I don't want to let you go again." Naya smiled, reaching out to touch his hand. "Then don't," she said simply. "Some things, some people, are meant to find their way back to each other." And in that moment, Ethan knew that their reunion was only the beginning. The river, the hills, and the whispering wind had brought them together, but it was their hearts, steadfast, patient, and true, that had truly reunited them. For the first time in many years, Ethan felt a sense of peace. The past had been painful. The years had been long, but here and now, beside the river with Naya, he understood that some connections endure all obstacles, all time and all distance. As they sat together, watching the sunlight dance on the water, Ethan couldn't help but whisper to himself, almost in disbelief, "After all these years, I finally found you." And for the first time in a decade, he believed that some things are never truly lost. Not hope, not love, and certainly not the magic of a childhood friend who had never truly left his heart. The days that followed Ethan's reunion with Naya were filled with quiet wonder and slow discovery. Each morning, the sun rose over the hills of Silver Creek, painting the world in gold and amber, and Ethan would find himself at the river before dawn, waiting for her. Naya always arrived a few moments later, carrying her bundle of herbs, moving gracefully through the morning mist. The sight of her, calm and steady, reminded him of the girl he once knew, the girl who had raced him along this river, laughed at his clumsy attempts to catch her, and held his secret dreams as her own. Yet now she was different. Stronger, wiser, with eyes that carried stories of survival and pain he could not yet imagine. Her presence was like a bridge between the past and the present, connecting his boyhood memories with the man he had become. He often found himself staring at her in silence, marveling at how she seemed both familiar and entirely new at the same time. One afternoon, as they walked along the riverbank, Ethan finally asked the question that had been burning inside him since their reunion. "Naya, what happened after you left Silver Creek? I never knew where you went or if you were safe." Naya paused, kneeling to gather some herbs by the water's edge. She ran her fingers gently over the plants, her expression thoughtful. "It was not easy," she said softly. "The world outside Silver Creek. It was harsh. My people were scattered. Some went to distant lands, some were lost along the way. I had to learn quickly how to survive, how to protect myself, and how to help others who had no one." Ethan listened carefully, his chest tightening with every word. He had imagined that she might have lived a quiet life somewhere, but he realized now that her life had been far from easy. He could see the strength in her posture, the careful precision in her movements, and he knew that this strength had been forged by years of challenge and responsibility. "But you returned," he said quietly, almost as if asking the question aloud would make it real. "You came back to Silver Creek. Why?" Naya looked at him, her dark eyes reflecting the flowing river. "I never stopped remembering this place. Not the town, but this river, these hills, the quiet corners where I once laughed and dreamed. I came back because I felt there was something unfinished, something waiting for me, something waiting for us." Ethan swallowed hard. The words hit him deeply, stirring memories of childhood days that seemed to belong to another life. He remembered the forts they built with sticks and stones, the games they played under the summer sun, and the promises they whispered to the stars at night. They had been inseparable then, bound by trust and joy, unaware of the harshness that the world outside their small town would bring. "Do you remember?" he asked softly. "The big cottonwood tree by the bend? We used to climb it together and make wishes on the stars." Naya's lips curved into a small smile. "I remember. You always wanted to climb higher than me, but you were afraid to let go. I teased you for it every time." Ethan chuckled, the sound warm and full of nostalgia. "I was afraid I'd fall, but I see now that I was really afraid of losing you." Naya's gaze softened and she took a step closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Some things never leave us, Ethan," she said gently. "Even when years pass, even when we are far apart, the heart remembers." The river flowed silently beside them, as if listening to their words. Birds sang in the trees and the wind carried the faint scent of sage and wildflowers. For a moment, the world seemed to pause, allowing them to exist in a bubble of memory and emotion, where the past and present could meet without pain or fear. As they continued walking along the river, Naya began to tell him more about her life. She spoke of the mountains where she had lived with her people, learning to gather herbs, prepare remedies, and care for those in need. She told him of nights spent under the stars, listening to the wind and learning to find strength in solitude. She had become a healer, a protector, someone who brought hope to those who had little. Ethan listened with awe. "I had no idea. You've done so much." I can't believe how strong you are. Naya shook her head gently. Strength is not always visible, Ethan. Sometimes it comes from quiet endurance, from knowing that life may be hard, but we must keep moving forward. And sometimes it comes from love. Love that stays even when the world tries to tear it away. Her words struck him deeply. He realized that this was the Naya he had always admired, the girl who had dared to challenge the world with her laughter, who had taught him the meaning of courage and loyalty. But now that courage had been tempered by experience and survival. She had seen hardship, yet she had not lost the light in her eyes. They stopped beneath a tall oak tree, its branches stretching over the water like protective arms. Naya sat on a fallen log, motioning for Ethan to sit beside her. The river flowed steadily, reflecting the sunlight in tiny diamonds, and the air smelled of fresh water and earth. I never forgot you, Ethan admitted quietly. Even when I tried to, even when I left, you were always in my mind. I wondered if you were safe, if you were happy, if you remembered me at all. Naya reached out, placing a gentle hand over his. I remembered, she said simply. Every day. And I hoped that one day we might meet again. That one day we might finish what we started. Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. The ache of 10 lost years softened, replaced by a cautious hope. I don't know what the future holds, he said, his voice filled with both hesitation and resolve. But I do know that I don't want to lose you again. Not now, not ever. Naya's eyes glistened slightly in the sunlight. Then we will face it together, she said. Whatever comes, we face it together. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the river, feeling the gentle rhythm of life around them. The world seemed quieter, kinder, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The past had been painful, yes, but now it was giving way to something new, a chance to reconnect, to rebuild, and to cherish what had survived all these years. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Naya stood and began to gather her herbs again. Ethan helped, and together they worked in quiet companionship, sharing small smiles and glances that spoke of understanding, trust, and the fragile, beautiful beginnings of love rekindled. By evening, they had walked farther than they realized, exploring the riverbanks, the hidden groves, and the hillsides where they had once played as children. The memories were vivid and alive, the echo of laughter, the feel of warm sunlight on young skin, the thrill of friendship that had blossomed into something neither of them could name at the time. As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Ethan and Naya climbed a small hill to watch the sunset. The town lay in the distance, quiet and peaceful, while the river glimmered below. The world seemed perfect in that moment, full of possibility and the quiet certainty that some connections endure all time and distance. Ethan turned to Naya and said, You've been through so much, and yet here you are, and I feel like I've finally come home. Naya smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Home is not just a place, Ethan. Home is a feeling. And for me, home has always been with you. Ethan felt a lump in his throat, and he took her hand in his. Then we will stay together, he said firmly. We will face what comes, and we will never let the past keep us apart again. Naya squeezed his hand gently. Yes, she agreed. Together. As night fell, they walked back toward the town, their shadows stretching long and soft across the hills. The river whispered beside them, carrying their laughter and their words into the night. For the first time in many years, Ethan felt that the lost years had not been wasted. The past had brought him here to this moment, to Naya, and nothing could take that away. And in the quiet of the evening, with the stars beginning to glimmer in the wide western sky, Ethan realized something he had not dared to believe for years. That love, true love, could survive time, distance, and hardship, that some bonds are so strong, so enduring, that nothing in the world can break them. And with Naya by his side, he knew that their story, the story of a boy and a girl who had once been inseparable, was only just beginning. The days grew longer, and the sun's golden rays bathed Silver Creek in warmth. Ethan and Naya's connection deepened with each passing hour. What began as cautious conversation and shared memories had evolved into a quiet understanding, a companionship rooted in years of separation and longing. They explored the familiar landscape together, the riverbank where they had once raced, the groves where they had built forts as children, and the small cliffs that overlooked the valley below. Every place carried echoes of laughter, whispers of promises, and the magic of youth that neither time nor hardship could erase. Ethan often found himself watching Naya, marveling at the way she moved with purpose and grace, yet always carrying the softness of a girl he had once known. He noticed how her hands gently touched the plants as she gathered herbs, how her eyes lingered on the sky, and how her smile could light even the dullest corner of his mind. It was as if the years of struggle had refined her, shaping her into someone stronger yet infinitely kind. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Ethan suggested they climb the hill near the edge of the river valley. The hill was steep, with jagged rocks and wildflowers scattered between patches of dry grass. As they climbed, Ethan's heart pounded, not from exertion but from anticipation. He wanted to speak, to finally bridge the years of silence and mystery that had separated them. But the right word seemed impossible to find. Naya, sensing his hesitation, placed a hand on his arm. "Ethan," she said softly, "sometimes words are not needed. The heart knows what it wants to say." Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath. She was right, of course. Words could not capture everything. The years apart, the longing, the memories, the unspoken promise of forever that had quietly endured in both of their hearts. Still, he felt compelled to speak. "Naya," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "There are things I need to tell you, things I should have said a long time ago." She looked at him, curiosity and patience in her eyes. "Then say them," she replied. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to find the courage. "I left Silver Creek thinking I needed to see the world, to make a life for myself. But no matter where I went, no matter how far I traveled, I never forgot you. I never stopped thinking about you, wondering if you were safe, if you were happy, if you remembered me at all." Naya's gaze softened, and she stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, I remembered," she whispered. "Every day. Even when I was far away, even when I thought I was alone, I never forgot. And I never stopped hoping. Hoping that one day you would come back." The words hit him like a gentle wave, washing away years of guilt, regret, and longing. He reached out, taking her hand in his, and felt an electric warmth spread through him. "I don't want to waste another moment," he said. "I want to be with you, to stay, to help you, to make up for all the time we lost." Naya smiled, her eyes glistening in the golden light. "Then we will," she said. "Together. Whatever comes, we face it together." They spent the evening walking along the riverbank, the fading sunlight casting long shadows behind them. They spoke of the past, the playful days of childhood, the small adventures, the secrets they had shared, and the promises they had made under the stars. Laughter mingled with the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft flow of the river, creating a harmony that felt timeless. As night fell, they climbed the hill overlooking the valley. The sky turned a deep shade of indigo, scattered with countless stars. The town below lay quiet, the flickering lights from a few windows casting a warm glow. Ethan and Naya stood side by side, looking at the vast expanse of the world before them. "I used to lie here at night," Naya said softly, "watching the stars and dreaming of the future. I never imagined it would bring me back here. Or do you?" Ethan turned to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I used to do the same," he admitted. "I would think of you, Naya, and wonder if you were happy, if you were safe, if you were waiting for me." Naya reached out, cupping his face gently in her hands. "And now we have found each other again," she said. "The past is behind us, but it has led us here, and here we can start anew." Ethan felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and awe. The years of separation, the uncertainty, the longing, it all melted away in the presence of Naya's calm and unwavering strength. For the first time in a decade, he felt that life had brought him to exactly where he was meant to be. They sat together on the edge of the hill, their legs dangling over the side, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. Ethan felt a sense of peace he had never known, a quiet certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers, and the river below glimmered in the moonlight, reflecting their shared happiness. After a while, Ethan spoke again, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Naya, the world out there, it can be harsh. There are still dangers, still people who may not understand your life, your choices, our connection. Are you ready to face it all?" Naya looked at him, her eyes steady and unwavering. I have faced many challenges, Ethan, she said. I have learned to survive, to help others, and to protect what is precious. And now, I am ready to face the world with you. Together we are stronger than we ever were apart. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the years lift from his shoulders. He realized that the journey they had taken, the separation, the struggles, the longing, had prepared them for this moment. They were no longer the children who had raced along the riverbank. They were two adults shaped by life's trials who had found their way back to each other. The night grew colder and they made their way down the hill, returning to the town. The streets of Silver Creek were quiet, and the air was filled with the soft chirping of crickets and the distant howl of a coyote. They walked side by side, their hands brushing occasionally, a silent promise passing between them with each touch. As they approached the river, Naya paused. She looked at Ethan, her expression serious yet tender. "There is something I want you to know," she said. "The world may not always be kind. There may be challenges ahead that test our resolve, that test our bond, but if we trust each other, if we hold on to what we have found, we can overcome anything." Ethan nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "I understand," he said, "and I promise, I will not let anything come between us. Not now, not ever." They reached the riverbank where the water flowed silently under the moonlight. Ethan untied his horse and led it to a small patch of grass while Naya prepared her herbs for the night. They worked side by side, their movements synchronized, comfortable in each other's presence, the quiet companionship, the shared tasks, and the gentle laughter that accompanied them created a sense of home. A home they had never truly had before, yet now shared fully with one another. As the night deepened, they sat by the river, the water reflecting the stars above. Ethan looked at Naya, taking in the beauty, strength, and warmth that radiated from her. "Naya," he said softly, "I know we cannot change the past, but the future is ours. And I want to spend it with you, building a life filled with trust, love, and hope." Naya smiled, resting her head briefly on his shoulder. "And we will, Ethan, together. No matter what comes, we will face it side by side. The past has led us here, but the future is ours to create." They stayed there for hours, talking, laughing, and planning quietly for the days to come. The river flowed on, the stars shone above, and the world seemed still, as if holding its breath in reverence of their reunion. For Ethan and Naya, the past and present had finally merged, and the promise of a shared future shone brighter than the western sun. As dawn approached, they finally made their way back to Silver Creek, their hands entwined, their hearts united. Ethan knew that challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in years he felt a sense of certainty and peace. They had found each other again, and that alone made every hardship worthwhile. And in the quiet of the early morning, with the first light of day washing over the town, Ethan realized that some connections are eternal, bonds that survive time, distance, and trials, waiting patiently for the moment when hearts will recognize each other again. Together, they would face the world, and stronger, wiser, and united, ready to create a story that no passage of time could ever erase. The morning sun rose slowly over Silver Creek, casting golden light across the rooftops and the river. The town was quiet save for the occasional creak of wagon wheels and the distant calls of early risers. For Ethan and Naya, the world felt full of promise. The past, with its pain and separation, had shaped them, but it no longer defined them. Together they had found something enduring, a connection that transcended time, distance, and hardship. Ethan stood by the river, brushing dust from his coat. Naya joined him, carrying a small bundle of herbs gathered from the nearby forest. Their hands brushed as she handed him a sprig of lavender, and he caught her gaze. In that moment, words were unnecessary. The bond between them was palpable, unspoken yet stronger than anything they had experienced before. "Ethan," Naya said softly, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time we do more than just exist side by side. We've found each other again, and we should honor that, not just in our hearts but in our lives." He looked at her, his eyes reflecting both surprise and deep understanding. "You're right," he replied. "The world is harsh, yes. But we've survived. We've found each other. Now we can create a life that matters, one step at a time." Their days settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Mornings were spent by the river, gathering herbs, tending to the sick and elderly townsfolk, and exploring the hills and forests around Silver Creek. Evenings were spent talking under the stars, recounting stories of their childhood, the places they had been, and the lessons they had learned along the way. Each day deepened their trust and love, building a bond resilient enough to face any challenge. One afternoon, while walking along the cliffs overlooking the valley, Ethan stopped and turned to Naya. "Do you ever think about the old days?" he asked, a gentle smile on his face. "Every day," she admitted, her eyes glistening. "I remember our games, our secrets, the laughter that seemed to fill the world. And I think about the promise we made, to always find our way back to each other." Ethan nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "We've kept that promise," he said softly. "Even when the world tried to pull us apart, even when we were lost, we never truly forgot." Naya took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "And now we don't have to forget ever again," she said. "We have a chance to build something real, something lasting." Over the following weeks, the townsfolk began to notice the change in Ethan and Naya. The quiet cowboy who had returned to Silver Creek now walked with a purpose, a calm confidence and a joy that had been missing for years. Naya, once a mysterious healer, now openly shared her knowledge and skills, helping those in need with patience and compassion. Together they became a source of hope and inspiration for the community. One evening, as the sun set in a brilliant blaze of orange and pink, Ethan and Naya sat on a hill overlooking the valley. The river glimmered below, reflecting the fiery sky, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of sage and wildflowers. They watched in silence, allowing the beauty of the moment to wash over them. "Naya," Ethan said, breaking the quiet, "I've been thinking about the future. About us. I want to make a life with you. One where we are never apart, where we face every challenge together, and where we can be truly happy." Naya looked at him, her dark eyes shining with emotion. "Ethan, I feel the same," she said. "We've been through so much, and yet we are here, together, stronger than ever. Whatever comes, we face it as one." The next day they began taking steps toward building a shared life. They repaired a small cabin near the river, painting it with care and filling it with simple but meaningful furnishings. They planted a garden with herbs and vegetables, creating a place of sustenance and beauty. Every nail hammered, every seed planted, and every brushstroke felt symbolic. A promise to nurture not only the land but the life they were creating together. Word of their bond spread through Silver Creek. The townspeople, once curious about the quiet Apache woman and the lone cowboy, now watched with admiration as the pair worked together, laughed together, and supported one another. They became a symbol of unity and resilience, proof that love and trust could endure even the harshest of times. One afternoon, as Ethan helped a neighbor repair a fence, he felt Naya's hand on his shoulder. He turned to her and saw a look in her eyes that made his heart leap, a mixture of joy, hope, and quiet certainty. "Come with me," she said, her voice full of warmth. She led him to the riverbank where the water shimmered in the late afternoon sun. Naya knelt and gathered a handful of smooth stones, handing one to Ethan. "These stones," she said, "represent the years we've been apart. Hard, rough, and sometimes painful. But they are part of our journey, and together we can build something beautiful with them." Ethan nodded, understanding the depth of her words. They each held a stone, and together, they built a small cairn by the river, a symbol of their journey, their reunion, and the life they were committed to creating together. As evening fell, they sat by the cairn, watching the sunset reflect on the water. "Ethan," Naya said softly, "do you remember the promise we made under the stars? That no matter what happened, we would always find our way back to each other?" Ethan smiled, brushing her hair gently from her face. "I remember, and I am so grateful that we have." Naya leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "The past shaped us, Ethan. The years apart taught us strength and patience, and now we have the chance to create a life filled with love, hope, and happiness. Together." The stars emerged slowly, one by one, over the western sky. Ethan and Naya sat in quiet reflection, feeling the river's gentle flow beside them, the night breeze brushing softly against their skin. The world felt vast yet intimate, filled with possibilities. Their hearts were full, their spirits intertwined, and the years of separation seemed like a distant memory, softened by the power of their reunion. In the following months, their life in Silver Creek flourished. Ethan and Naya worked side by side, helping the townsfolk and healing old wounds, both personal and communal. Their love became a foundation for hope, a reminder that even in the Wild West, a land of hardships, uncertainty, and challenge, bonds of trust and affection could endure and thrive. Every evening, they would sit by the river, watching the sky turn brilliant shades of red and gold, and talk about dreams, hopes, and the world they wanted to build together. They laughed freely, shared stories of their childhood, and made small promises, not the grandiose ones of children, but real, lasting promises grounded in love and respect. One night, as they watched the stars reflect on the river's surface, Ethan whispered, "Naya, you are my home. You always have been, and now I want to spend every day proving that to you." Naya smiled, her eyes bright with tears of joy. "And I will stand by you, Ethan. We have survived so much, and now we have each other. That is all that matters." The river flowed gently beside them, carrying with it the echoes of their laughter, their words, and the quiet power of a love that had endured decades. The hills and trees of Silver Creek stood witness to their bond, as eternal and steadfast as the land itself. Ethan took Naya's hand in his, holding it tightly, a silent promise that nothing could ever separate them again. They had weathered the storms of time and hardship, and now together they were free to create a life of peace, love, and fulfillment. And so, under the wide western sky, with the stars above and the river below, Ethan and Naya began the next chapter of their lives. They had found each other again, childhood friends turned soulmates, and nothing in the world could ever take that away. Their story, once paused by distance and circumstance, now continued in full color, a tale of resilience, love, and the enduring magic of a bond that time could never break. And whenever someone asked Ethan about the quiet, strong and beautiful woman by his side, he would smile softly, tip his hat, and say, "Don't you recognize her? She's my childhood love, the Apache beauty who never forgot me."